Moreover, although it was stated by Le Toilet that the corpse was reinterred at the public expense, that an advantageous offer of private sepulchre was absolutely declined by the family, and that no member of the family attended the ceremonial, although I say all this was asserted by Le Toilet. In furtherance of the impression it designed to convey, yet all this was satisfactorily disapproved. In a subsequent number of the paper, an attempt was made to throw suspicion upon Beauvais himself. The editor says, "Now then, a change comes over the matter. We are told that on one occasion, while Madame B was at Madame Roget's house, M. Beauvais was going out, told her that a gendarme was expected there, and that she, Madame B, must not say anything to the gendarme until he returned. But let the matter be for him. In the present posture of affairs, M. Beauvais appears to have the whole matter locked up in his head. A single step cannot be taken without M. Beauvais, for go which way you will, you run against him. For some reason he determined that nobody shall have anything to do with the proceedings but himself. And he has elbowed the male relatives out of the way, according to their representations. In a very singular matter, he seems to have been very much averse to permitting the relatives to see the body. By the following fact, some color was given to the suspicion thus thrown upon Beauvais, a visitor at his office a few days prior to the girl's disappearance, and during the absence of its occupant, had observed a rose in the keyhole of the door, and the name Marie inscribed upon a slate which hung near at hand. The general impression, so far that we were unable to glean it from the newspapers, seems to be that Marie had been the victim of a gang of desperadoes, that by these she had been borne across the river, maltreated and murdered. Le Commerciel, however, a print of extensive influence, was earnest in combating this popular idea. I quote a passage or two from its columns. We are persuaded that pursuit has hitherto been on a false scent, so far that it has been directed to the Barrière du Roulet. It is impossible that a person so well known to thousands as this young woman was should have passed 3 blocks without someone having seen her, and anyone who saw her would have remembered it, for she interested all who knew her. It was when the streets were full of people when she went out. It is impossible that she could have gone to the Barrière du Roulet or the Rue des Drômes without being recognized by a dozen persons. Yet no one has come forward who saw her outside her mother's door, and there is no evidence except the testimony concerning her express intentions that she did go out at all. Her gown was torn, bound round her, and tied, and by that body was carried as a bundle. If the murder had been committed at the Barrière du Roulet, there would have been no necessity for such arrangement. The fact that the body was found floating near the Barrière is no proof to as where it was thrown in the water. A piece of one unfortunate girl's petticoats, 2 feet long and 1 foot wide, was torn out and tied under her chin around the back of her head, probably to prevent screams. This was done by fellows who had no pocket handkerchief. A day or two before the prefect called upon us, However, some important information reached the police, which seemed to overthrow at least the chief portion of Lake Commercial's argument. Two small boys, sons of a Madame de Luc, were roaming around the woods near the Barrière du Roulet, chanced to penetrate a close thicket, within which were 3 or 4 large stones, forming a kind of seat with a back and a footstool. On the upper stone lay a white petticoat. On the second, a silk scarf. A parasol, gloves, and a pocket handkerchief were also here found. The handkerchief bore the name Marie Roget. Fragments of the dress were discovered on the brambles around. The earth was trampled. The bushes were broken, and there was every evidence of a struggle. Between the thicket and the river, the fences were found taken down. And the ground bore evidence of some heavy burden having been dragged along it. A weekly paper, Le Soleil, had the following comments upon this discovery. Comments which merely echoed the sentiment of the whole Parisian press. The things had all been evidently there at least 3 or 4 weeks. They were all mildewed down hard with the action of rain and stuck together from mildew. The grass had grown around them and over some of them. The silk in the parasol was strong, but the threads of it were thrown together within. The upper part, where it had been doubled and folded, was all mildewed and rotten and torn on its being opened. The pieces of her frock were torn out by the bushes were about 3 inches wide and 6 inches long. One part of the hem was of the frock, and it had been mended, and the other piece was of the part of the skirt, not the hem. It looked like strips torn off and were on the thorn bush about a foot on the ground. From the ground. There can be no doubt, therefore, that the spot of this appalling outrage had been discovered. Consequent upon this discovery, new evidence appeared. Madame de Luc testified that she keeps a roadside inn not far from the bank of the river, opposite the Barrière du Roulet. The neighborhood is secluded, particularly so. It is the usual Sunday resort of the black cars from the city, who cross the river in boats. About 3 o'clock in the afternoon on the Sunday in question, a young girl arrived at the inn, accompanied by a young man of dark complexion. The two remained here for some time. On their departure, they took to the road to some thick woods in the vicinity. Madame de Luc's attention was called to the dress worn by the girl on account of its resemblance to one worn by a deceased relative. A scarf was particularly noticed. Soon after the departure of the couple, a gang of miscreants made their appearance, behaved boisterously, ate and drank without making payment, followed in the route of the young man and girl, returned to the inn about dusk, and recrossed the river as if in great haste. It was soon after dark upon the same evening that Madame de Luc, as well as her eldest son, heard the screams of a female in the vicinity of the inn. The screams were violent but brief. Madame D recognized not only the scarf which was found in the thicket, but the dress which was discovered upon the corpse. An omnibus driver of Valence, now also testified that he saw Marie Roget cross a ferry on the scene on the Sunday in question, in company with a young man of dark complexion. He, Valence, knew Marie, and could not be mistaken in her identity. The articles found in the thicket were fully identified by the relatives of Marie. The items of evidence and the information thus collected by myself from newspapers of the suggestion of Dupont embraced only one more point, but this was a point of seemingly vast consequence. It appears that immediately after the discovery of the clothes as above described, though lifeless or nearly lifeless, body of St. Eustache, Marie's betrothed, was found in the vicinity of what all now supposed the scene of outrage. A vial labeled laudanum and emptied was found near him. His breath gave evidence to the poison. He died without speaking. Upon his person was found a letter, briefly stating his love for Marie with his design of self-destruction. "I need scarcely tell you," said Dupont, as he finished the perusal of my notes, "that this is a far more intricate case than that of the Rue Morgue, from which it differs in one important respect. This is an ordinary, although an atrocious, instance of crime. There's nothing particularly auteur about it. You will observe that for this reason, the mystery has been considered easy, when for this reason it should have been considered difficult of solution. Thus, at first, it was thought unnecessary to offer a reward. The myrmidons of G were able at once to comprehend how and why such an atrocity might have been committed. They could picture to their imaginations a mode, many modes, and a motive, many motives, and because it was not impossible that either of these numerous modes and motives could have been the actual one, they have taken it for granted that one of them must. But the ease with which these variable fancies were entertained, and the very plausibility which each assumed, should have been understood as indicative rather of the difficulties rather than the facilities which must attend elucidation. I have therefore observed that it is by prominences above the plane of the ordinary that reason feels her way, if at all, in her search for the true, and that the proper question in cases such as this is not so much what has occurred as what has occurred that has never occurred before. In the investigations of the house of Madame L'Espanaye, the agents of G were discouraged and found by that very unusualness which, to a properly regulated intellect, would have afforded the surest omen of success, while this same intellect might have been plunged in despair at the ordinary character of all that met the eye in the case of the perfumery girl, and yet told of nothing but easy triumph to the functionaries of the prefecture. In the case of Madame L'Espanaye and her daughter, there was, even at the beginning of our investigation, no doubt that the murder had been committed. The idea of suicide was excluded here at once. Here, too, we are free at the commencement from all supposition of self-murder. The body found at the Barrière du Roule was found under such circumstances as to leave us no room for embarrassment upon this important point. But it has been suggested that the corpse discovered is not that of Marie Roget for the conviction of whose assassin or assassins the reward is offered, and respecting whom solely our agreement has been arranged with the prefect. We both know that this gentleman well. It will not do to trust him too far if, dating our inquiries from the body found, and then tracing a murderer, we yet discover this body to be that of some other individual than Marie, or if, starting from the living Marie, we find her, yet find her unassassinated. In either case, we lose our labor, since it is Monsieur G with whom we have to deal. For our own purpose, therefore, if not for the purpose of justice, it is indispensable that our first step should be determination of the identity of the corpse with the Marie Roget, who is missing,